No one would help the Apache mother and her two daughters until a lone cowboy stepped in. His simple act of kindness changed their fate forever. Watch how trust and courage turn fear into hope on the Wild West frontier. Don't miss this heartwarming story. Hit subscribe now and join us for more incredible tales. Let's get started. The scorching plains of New Mexico stretched endlessly under the unforgiving sun, shimmering in gold and brown. In 1884, survival was a daily battle, and for a widowed Apache mother named Kaya and her two daughters, survival had become a desperate hope. They wandered the open land, carrying only the remnants of their belongings and memories of the family they had lost. Each step through the sand-drenched grass burned their feet, and the wind carried whispers of indifference from the distant settlements. Every passing wagon reminded them of humanity's indifference. Doors were shut, eyes turned away, and the world seemed to reject them. Hunger clawed at their bellies, the girls' lips cracked, and the mother's heart ached at their suffering. With each nightfall, despair tightened around them like a vice, and sleep offered no relief from the harsh reality. The sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the desert as Kaya led her daughters toward a cluster of mesquite trees. The older girl, Lena, struggled to keep her pace, clutching her younger sister's hand tightly. "Mama, I'm so tired," she whispered, her voice trembling with exhaustion and fear. Kaya knelt beside her briefly, brushing the sand from her daughter's face, and whispered words of encouragement. "We keep going, Lena. We will find safety. We must." The girls nodded, too weary to speak further. Each step was measured, deliberate, and full of the silent hope that somewhere in the vast desert a helping hand might still exist. They had encountered enough cruelty and neglect to know that hope was a fragile thing, yet it was all they had. Dust swirled around them as the day wore on, and the horizon seemed to stretch endlessly. The family's desperation grew with every passing hour. Kaya's eyes scanned the landscape, searching for any sign of civilization, any shelter, or even the faintest indication that someone would care. The girls walked silently behind her, too tired to complain, too hungry to argue, but their eyes were wide with fear. Their world had become a constant exercise in vigilance. Even the smallest sound, an animal stirring, a distant wagon, sent tremors of anxiety through them. Kaya knew that if they didn't find safety soon, the desert could claim them. Each passing moment weighed heavily, yet she forced herself to remain calm. Her children's lives depended on it. Suddenly, the sound of hooves echoed faintly in the distance. Kaya paused, squinting at the horizon where a lone figure appeared on horseback. Samuel Hayes, a cowboy known for his fair treatment of both people and livestock, rode steadily toward them. He noticed the weariness in their steps and the fear etched into their faces. Without hesitation, he dismounted near the family, tipping his hat politely. The girls shrank behind their mother, unsure whether this stranger represented danger or salvation. Samuel's calm demeanor, the gentleness of his smile, and the lack of aggression in his posture began to ease some of their tension. "You've traveled far," he said softly, his voice carrying across the dry plains. "Come with me. I will bring you home." The offer surprised Kaya. In a land where strangers often pass by, ignored or worse, Samuel's kindness felt almost unreal. Her daughters clung to her skirts, hesitant but hopeful. Why would you help us?" Kaya asked, her voice cautious, wary of promises that could not be kept. Samuel shook his head, his eyes sincere. "Because it's the right thing to do. You deserve safety. No one should be left to suffer in this desert." He extended a hand toward them, not demanding trust, but offering an invitation. Slowly, Kaya led her daughters forward, unsure whether to believe the man who could easily have ignored them, yet sensing a glimmer of hope she hadn't felt in weeks. As they walked beside Samuel's horse, Kaya's heart beat faster. The girls trailed closely, their tiny hands clutching hers for reassurance. The land was harsh, and the sun dipped lower, painting the desert in fiery oranges and reds. Samuel adjusted his saddle, walking alongside them to ensure they kept pace. He didn't speak unnecessarily, but offered small gestures of care, a sip of water from his canteen, guidance over uneven rocks, protection from loose branches. With every step he earned the cautious trust of the weary travelers. The girls began to relax slightly, seeing that his intentions were genuine. Safety, it seemed, might actually exist. By late afternoon, they reached a small, shaded area where Samuel paused, letting the girls rest. He unpacked a small cloth sack, offering pieces of bread and fresh water. The girls hesitated, but hunger won over fear, and they took the food with trembling hands. Kaya watched them, silently assessing Samuel. His actions spoke louder than words. No hidden motives, no expectation of payment, no demand for obedience. Just simple, honest help. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of relief. Perhaps, just perhaps, this stranger could offer the refuge they had been seeking in a world that had turned its back. As night approached, Samuel led them toward a safe camp he had prepared. A small wooden shelter stood amid mesquite trees, protected from the harsh wind and prying eyes of passers-by. The family stepped inside, the girl's exhaustion visible in every movement. Kaya sank to the ground beside them, finally allowing herself a moment of reprieve. Samuel quietly arranged bedding for them, speaking softly and ensuring their comfort. No questions about their past, no judgment, just safety and shelter. The mother and daughters looked at him with a mixture of relief, wonder, and cautious gratitude. The stars began to twinkle above as the desert cooled, and the family finally felt the weight of constant fear lift slightly. The girls, their stomachs finally satisfied and bodies beginning to rest, looked up at Samuel, wide-eyed. Kaya's voice trembled slightly as she said, We don't know how to thank you." Samuel smiled, shaking his head gently. "No thanks are needed. Just stay safe. Rest. Tomorrow, we will plan the next steps together." His words carried sincerity, and the family understood that he meant everyone. Safety, at last, had found them. That night, Kaya held her daughters close, whispering words of hope and reassurance. The desert was still vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but for the first time, they had a guide, a protector, and a home to return to. Samuel sat outside the small shelter, keeping watch over them as the stars shimmered. His presence was a quiet promise that not all men in the frontier sought to harm. Some acted with honor, courage, and genuine compassion. For Kaya and her daughters, that truth was life-changing. By dawn, the family had begun to recover from their ordeal. Kaya looked at the horizon and silently thanked the cowboy who had chosen to help when no one else would. Samuel prepared his horse, ensuring the path ahead was safe. With patience, care, and understanding, he led them toward a more permanent refuge. Trust had been earned step by step, and by the morning sun, hope glimmered brightly. The harsh desert was no longer only a place of fear. It had become a land where kindness could exist, where a cowboy's choice changed the fate of an entire family. Samuel led Kaya and her daughters through the winding desert trails, the red hills casting long shadows across the parched earth. The girls walked closely behind their mother, tiny hands gripping each other for reassurance. Kaya's eyes flicked nervously over the rugged terrain, wary of potential danger. Years of being turned away had taught her that not all who offered help meant it. Yet Samuel moved with calm authority, every step measured and careful, his presence radiating trustworthiness. He spoke only when necessary, offering soft guidance and gentle reassurance. The desert was silent except for the whisper of the wind, yet with Samuel by their side, the family felt a growing sense of hope. The journey was slow, measured, and deliberate. Samuel occasionally paused to ensure the girls could keep up, bending slightly to adjust Lena's shawl or steady Mayu's trembling hand. Kaya walked a step behind, observing, absorbing, and silently questioning whether this stranger could be trusted. Each gesture of care, each unspoken promise, began to chip away at the fear that had become a constant companion. The scorching sun dipped toward the horizon, bathing the desert in warm oranges and reds. With every mile, the family's trust grew fragile but real. As they approached the distant silhouette of Samuel's ranch, the girl's eyes widened in awe. The fences, the barn, the modest wooden cabin, it all promised safety. Kaya's heart thumped with a mix of disbelief and relief. For so long, every settlement had turned them away. Every traveler had passed without notice. And now, here was a man whose very demeanor radiated care. Samuel guided them to the open gate, gesturing toward the barn. "Make yourselves comfortable," he said gently. "There is food, water, and rest for you. No one here will ask for anything in return." Inside the barn, Samuel brought out clean blankets and arranged simple bedding for the girls. Their small hands clutched the fabric nervously, unsure whether this sanctuary would last. Kaya knelt beside them, brushing sand from their hair and whispering soothing words. Samuel didn't hover, didn't demand attention, and didn't press for gratitude. He moved about quietly, tending to his horses and supplies, ensuring everything was in order. His calm, respectful manner conveyed something Kaya hadn't seen in years: generosity without expectation. Slowly, the girls' tense shoulders relaxed, their eyes brightened, and for the first time in a long while they laughed quietly at a joke their mother whispered. Night fell over the red hills, and the desert cooled to a comfortable chill. Samuel tended the campfire outside, stacking logs and ensuring the flame would last through the night. Kaya sat just inside the barn door, holding Mayu close while Lena leaned against her side. The flickering firelight cast long shadows, but fear had lost its grip. "I can't believe anyone would help us like this," Kaya whispered. Samuel glanced up briefly, giving a small, understanding nod. "Some things are worth doing simply because they are right," he replied softly. His voice carried sincerity, and the mother realized that in this vast, unforgiving land, there were still people guided by principle. As the night deepened, the sounds of the desert became a lullaby. Coyotes howled in the distance, the wind rustled through the sparse mesquite trees, and the stars shimmered brightly above. Kaya allowed herself to rest, leaning back against the barn wall. She watched Samuel from the corner of her eye, noting his quiet diligence and unwavering patience. Here was a man who cared for the vulnerable, who understood respect, who acted without expectation of reward. In that moment, Kaya felt a surge of gratitude that words could not fully express. Perhaps, after so much suffering, the family had finally found a place to breathe freely. By dawn, the first light painted the ranch in gold. Samuel emerged from the cabin, tending to the horses and checking the fences. Kaya stood at the barn door, watching, unsure of how to thank him. Her daughters stirred, stretching and blinking sleepily, their small hands brushing over the blankets that Samuel had carefully arranged. Kaya's voice was soft as she finally spoke. "You've given us a chance few would," she said quietly, her heart swelling with relief and appreciation. Samuel paused, tipping his hat in a gesture of quiet respect. "Only if you choose to stay, ma'am. This is your home now," he replied. The family explored the ranch cautiously. The cabin smelled of wood and warmth, a stark contrast to the harsh desert outside. Samuel showed them the water trough, the small vegetable patch, and the sturdy fences that would protect the livestock. He explained nothing forcefully, only offering guidance, allowing Kaya to absorb each detail at her own pace. The girls giggled softly as they explored, discovering small comforts they hadn't experienced in months. The sense of safety began to cement itself into their hearts. For the first time, they realized that home wasn't just a place, it was the presence of someone who cared. As days passed, Samuel's consistent kindness nurtured trust. He taught the girls to help with chores, not as labor, but as learning, and he ensured Kaya had space to rest and recover. The mother's gratitude deepened with every gesture of patience. No one demanded anything from them, no one questioned their worth, and no one sought to exploit their vulnerability. In a world that had repeatedly closed doors, Samuel's generosity opened an entirely new path. By simply being steadfast, patient, and honorable, he demonstrated that trust could exist even in the harshest frontier. Evenings became a time of quiet reflection. The desert sunset cast fiery colors across the hills, and the family often sat near the barn, sharing modest meals. Samuel never imposed, never forced conversation, yet his presence became a silent anchor. Kaya watched the way he interacted with the girls, noting the respect and care in every movement. Slowly, her fear of the outside world began to fade. The children's laughter, once absent, filled the air. The harsh desert that had seemed so unyielding now felt softer, more welcoming. Samuel's actions had turned survival into possibility. One morning, Kaya stood outside, feeling the warmth of the rising sun on her face. She watched Samuel tend to his horses, his movements confident and deliberate. She realized that trust had grown, not suddenly, but steadily, through patience and consistent kindness. The girls ran ahead, chasing each other across the yard, their laughter echoing against the hills. Kaya felt a swell of gratitude and hope. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to envision a future where safety, respect, and stability were not just dreams but tangible realities. Samuel's choice to help had transformed their lives. By mid-morning, Samuel gathered some fresh water and food for the family, encouraging them to rest and recover further. "Take what you need," he said, smiling warmly. "There's no rush here. You're safe, and that's all that matters." Kaya nodded, understanding fully that this wasn't just temporary kindness. Samuel's actions conveyed permanence, a promise that the family could rebuild without fear of betrayal or harm. In the vast, challenging desert of New Mexico, a single act of compassion had blossomed into sanctuary. As the day wore on, the family began to feel truly at home. The girls played near the barn, calling out to each other, while Kaya explored the small fields and garden patches Samuel had maintained. Each act, each gesture from Samuel reinforced that they were no longer wandering strangers. His trustworthiness and gentle authority created a foundation on which they could rebuild their lives. Slowly, the trauma of their recent experiences gave way to the possibility of hope, security, and belonging. By nightfall, Samuel and Kaya sat outside the barn, watching the stars blink into existence above the desert. The wind carried the scent of mesquite and damp earth. Kaya spoke softly. "I never imagined we could find kindness like yours." Samuel shrugged modestly, his gaze steady. "It's all any of us can do. Protect those who need it and treat them with respect." His words were simple, but they carried immense weight. The family felt anchored, the desert no longer a place of fear, but of opportunity, trust, and safety. The first week at the ranch passed with quiet ease. Kaya began to feel the contours of a new life taking shape. The girls slept without fear, ate without anxiety, and laughed without restraint. Samuel maintained his protective yet unobtrusive presence, never pushing, never prying. The desert outside remained wild and dangerous, but within the walls of the ranch, safety, care, and respect reigned. For the first time in months, Kaya allowed herself to believe that a better life was possible. By the second week, the family felt genuinely at home. Samuel's consistent care had earned not only their trust, but their respect. He never demanded gratitude or repayment, only offered safety and kindness. The girls followed his instructions with eagerness, learning the rhythms of ranch life. Kaya's heart swelled with hope for the future. This ranch, once just a place on a map, had become a haven, a testament to what compassion and consistency could achieve in the unforgiving frontier of New Mexico.